Hello, welcome to Flight Past. My name is Simon. Good to see you. And we are in the Huey helicopter flying over the eastern part of the battlefield of Waterloo. In fact, we're looking south now. We're going to turn around, and what you'll see is essentially the over here, where my white dot is now, are the woods where the Prussians came out of. From around about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Now we've looked at the opening sequence where Bulu's early brigades are pressed forward under Blucher's urgency to engage essentially with the French to try to relieve the pressure that Wellington was experiencing up on the ridge of Mont Saint-Jean. And how they had come out of these woods just below us here and advanced through these fields towards the village of Plancenoit and taking the chateau of Fichemont on the way. And then we also looked then at Ziethen's corps, who came from Genval over this side here, and they started to form up in this area, and then the vanguard of Ziethen's corps under basically Steinmetz's cavalry then moved up onto the ridge of Mont Saint-Jean on the Wellington's left side, and that enables Vivian's cavalry to be relieved, and Vivian's cavalry moved into the center position around that panorama that you see there with the blue location symbol on it. So the impact of the Prussians is starting to be felt positively for Wellington and negatively for Napoleon. And we're now getting to the point where it's around about 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And the first assault now is going to go in on Plancenoit. And it starts with a Prussian artillery bombardment there on crest, just in front of the village of Plancenoit. And the first assault is going in with Hiller's battalions, about 6 battalions from Hiller's brigade, and they will move in on the southern side of a road. Now let me just try and find that for you. We'll just spin around here, and this is where the Bulu's 4th Corps was forming up, and then they were coming up and up through these trees and then out onto this the battlefield plain, I suppose we could call it. I'm just going to pause here and jump out. It might be a little bit easier to see. So this is the direction of Bulu's, the advance of Bulu's corps, heading onto the battlefield. Now, as you remember, when we get, we have Hiller's brigade on the left and Lostin's on the right. And they were kind of advancing down this road here. And there's some battalions in this wood on the left as well, which was known as Vireri Wood. And what you've got as well is, so we left this position because the 2 brigades weren't going to be enough to attack this position. And we think that the artillery had moved up into somewhere around this area here. And what we can see over this side here is the church of Plancenoit here. So this is the sort of focal point that they're all driving towards in this sort of direction there. And behind these 2 brigades, that comes the brigades of Hake and the rear guard of Rissel. So the first artillery starts attacking, and then we get the actual infantry attacking. And this is Hilliers battalions, and they start attacking the village. And Simmer is the French guy in Lobel's corps, and he's got about 9 battalions defending their positions here in the village of Plancenoit. Initially, they're forced back from the edge of the village by sheer weight of numbers. But the church becomes a focal point because it's got a high wall around it. And it's almost like a sort of a citadel, a kind of a castle, defending a central position. So we should see the kind of view that the French would have had looking back towards the Prussian advance. The French had got artillery pieces up here as well that were firing canister at point-blank range. And they describe how the dead started piling up around this sort of church area. But nevertheless, sort of a concerted defense wasn't enough, and the sheer numbers then managed to overwhelm the French here. And by around about 6 o'clock, then the village is taken by the Prussians. Now, when they describe the village, I'm not actually sure how far that extended. You see, it's quite a large village. I don't know how much of this is modern now. So we'll just have to sort of use a good guesswork really here. And what's interesting at this point as well is that there's reports that Prussian cannonballs are beginning to fall in the area of the French reserves. Now, I think they would be probably in this area here. So you can see how cannonballs are going to start landing around this area. Even I think I might be wrong, but I've heard that it might have even been reaching the road at this point. The cannons are being fired and they're coming across, and presumably somewhere in this area is the Imperial Guard Reserve, and they actually start having cannonball landing around them. So you can see how that this is around about 6 o'clock, so this is getting to the crisis point of the battle, how this then becomes a major distraction to Napoleon. Now, we believe he's somewhere around here. This one of these buildings here is the Rossom farm. It's probably one of these buildings here, and so he's likely to probably be around here somewhere, and he's obviously got concerns now coming from his right hand side, and trying to at the same time defeat Wellington on his ridge. This is the point when he's having to commit his actual reserve, and I'm just going to skip back on some of my notes to the formations. Here we go. So when we're talking about his reserve, let me find that. The Imperial. What do we mean by the Imperial Guard is what I'm trying to get at, and essentially the Imperial Guard is almost like a core in itself. So we've got the commander of I suppose of the Imperial Guard is a guy called Drouot, and then he's got the division, the Grenadier divisions, the Chasseurs divisions, and the Young Guard division in terms of infantry. And so you've got the first. The Grenadier Division, so Friant is the commander of that, and you've got the 1st and 2nd Grenadiers, and then you've got the 3rd and 4th Grenadiers. Then you've got the Chasseurs Division under Morand, and there's the 1st and 2nd Chasseurs, and the 3rd and 4th Chasseurs, and then you've got the Young Guard under de Hesme, and that's the 1st Tirailleurs, the 1st Voltigeurs under Chartrand, and the 3rd Tirailleurs and the 3rd Voltigeurs under Gouillet. So he's essentially here going to send off the Young Guard. So that's 1/3 of his infantry in his reserve is now going to be moved across in the direction of Plancenoit. Now you know that if the Prussians weren't here, then this Young Guard would have probably been the first troops to go up and support Ney's cavalry charges on the ridge here. So already this is a major impact occurring on the battle here, and this is essentially why the attack on Wellington fails. So the Young Guard move into Plancenoit, and we're then going to be waiting for the second phase of this this battle. Now, in the meantime, let's do a bit of flying. Zieten, remember we left him in the area over this side. He had gone back to hurry along Perche, and he returns at this point to his vanguard, and he continuing to move up towards Wellington's left. And what he says at this point is that he sees essentially what he believes is Wellington's front line is crumbling. There's masses of wounded, and stragglers are moving essentially off this ridge here and back into the Bois de Saunier and on towards Brussels. So he's essentially he believes at this moment that Wellington's position is actually crumbling right as he's looking at it, and he sends an officer to inspect the situation at close orders, and that officer actually returns to him and says that he believes that Wellington has lost the battle. And what he sees as well is he's seeing the the Nassau's of Saxe-Weimar, and even Losothin's battalions who were attacking the Chateau of Fichemont and being repelled. And it's believed at this time that Zieten is then joined by a staff officer from Blucher, and they have a conversation at this point. So let's just pause here and we'll jump out at this point. And we'll just move over to where we believe that conversation might have occurred. And I think it would be somewhere in this area here. They can basically see on the right-hand side, there's a stream of wounded and desertions going off into the woods. And on this side here, well, there's Prussians being forced back from the Fichemont, this area here, and Saxe-Weimar's moving back. So the whole appearance is of a lost battle. And from this point here, with Bulu down there to the south, in the direction of Genappe there, the High Command officer believes that the possession of Plancenoit would be the best option at this point, and to hold that would be they'd be able to win the battle that way. So he orders, the staff officer of Blucher's orders Zieten to move all his available troops, essentially, to towards Bulu's right flank. Because, remember, at this point, Bulu is they've sort of got into Plancenoit in this area here, but the young guard are moving back in, and there's kind of a stalemate going on here. So the pressure for Zieten is to move across and to put pressure on the sort of right flank of the left flank of the young guard, or the right flank, and be the right flank of Bulu, if you get my drift. So this is a crucial point, because remember, we've got the Reich. He's gone off to see the situation for himself, and he's he gets back to this area here, and he finds Zieten about to do this move towards the south and not along the ridge towards Wellington. And Reicher had, so he was the staff officer for Zieten. He had actually promised Saxe-Weimar that there was support coming. But at this point, you've got Zieten having to weigh up whether he obeys the order of the staff officer of Blucher, or his own chief of staff in his corps. So he decides that he better obey the staff officer of Blucher. And so he decides then that his men would turn their backs then on, put their not come along this ridge here towards Wellington, but they will actually move down to the left here. And so he begins the motion towards the village you see ahead of you there in Plancenoit. At this point, Muffling is looking down the ridge towards Zieten's position, and he sees this move, and he immediately gallops over to Zieten. Words are exchanged, let's put it that way. And Muffling persuades Zieten to change his mind and turn back towards Wellington. Now at this point, we got to keep in context. This is around about 7 o'clock in the afternoon, and for context, the battle for La Haye-Saint has been waging all day long, and eventually Bering's men here, Bering's men here are running out of ammunition, and actually La Haye-Saint is going to be taken by the French, and this then opens up the ability for the artillery to move up onto this ridge and then be able to pour fire into the squares of the Anglo-Dutch army. So Muffling has come over here and said to Zieten, "What the hell are you doing, man? We need you over here," and persuaded him to come back. So it's as Wellington would say, it's a very close run thing. So if you think about the situation right now, yes, Napoleon has had to use some of his reserve, but the young guard have moved in back into Plancenoit and look like they may be able to hold it. Ney has now managed to grab control of La Haye-Saint. The cavalry are up here keeping the Allied Dutch army in square up this end, and yes, Zieten's corps is pouring out here, but they would be moving this way, but they need to go that way. So at this point, you could say that the battle was still in limbo, because the Imperial Guard the rest of the Imperial Guard will be preparing to launch their attack on Wellington's position, and this is at 7 o'clock in the evening. And that seems to be a good place to take another break. And so when we come back, we'll look into the second phase of the attack on the village of Plancenoit, and we're talking around about 7 o'clock in the evening now, on the 18th of June. So thank you very much for listening, and do all the loving, hugging, ticking, smiling, whatever it is that you do these days on social media, and I will see you in a moment if you're watching live, and if you're not, and then I'll see you in the next episode.